So many thanks for having me here. I take you from a very poor area, what we have heard before, to a more affluent and rich society. I bring here a case and bring your thoughts to a decision-making process in the real world. So we have here a real case. And I make the argument that this is a case that works very well. So we can learn from this case also for other cases, for going more digitally or in other circumstances. But that's something we can learn here. And I focused on the flow of information in this process. So I start with the flow of information in Swiss direct democracy. But as I said, this model can be transferred to other contexts. What do we see here? We see 4 steps in the whole process. I call them frame construction, frame promotion, frame addition, and framing effects. So decision-making processes involve different steps. I call them like this, what I just mentioned. It involves different actor types, different roles that are linked to these actor types. Here we have political actors, we have journalists, and we have voters. They also can switch role. So if you are in Switzerland, you vote, or you can vote, but you can also bring in a topic. So you can become a political actor in a sense. As a journalist, you also can vote, so it's not totally fixed. These roles are not totally fixed, but still there are these roles. So political actors construct and promote frames, or that's our arguments in a policy proposal. Different perspectives, bring forward their perspective and bring that into the whole process. Then we have the media input. That's, for instance, a document presented on a press conference, on a media conference, or in a video. So the arguments that are for or against the proposal. In direct democracy, we have this majority voting. So you are either in favor or against the proposal. Then journalists edit basically those frames, so they can concentrate on quality control in a sense. They will present both sides with their arguments. They don't have to prepare the debate, but really can concentrate on a quality control. Then we have the frames in the news media. So that means what you read in newspaper, or you listen in radio or in TV. And still in Switzerland, most people get their information from classical media for the votes. And then we have the voters who make up their minds and have the decision in their thoughts, and finally also vote based on this. So that's the model. You see also feedback mechanisms, as we also heard in the talk in the morning. Feedback mechanisms are very important. I was happy to see that they were also implemented in a case study. So that's also important. It does not flow in one direction, it also flows back, but of course there is a dominant direction of the flow, to say. So political communication is prepared. It takes a lot of effort to prepare it. It does not come easily. Political actors are well experienced. So votes take place 4 times a year, and they know exactly how it works. They almost have a feeling like which arguments are understandable, and they choose the arguments they are credible with. So that's, of course, a lot of discussion preventing a choice of arguments. And also in terms of policy proposals, there also was some work involved before. So sometimes there were years before something comes to a vote. So a lot of preparation. Political communication is goal-oriented. Those actors involved have their roles, have their goals. So political actors might primarily win the vote and with this bring their policy proposal through. or into action. Journalists want to balance out the situation, want to provide good quality of information, and the voters then want to vote. And we, as I said, we have these journalists here. So these are independent, hopefully quality-oriented journalists, and they play an important role here. They have, those norms are extremely important, and that's one reason for the good quality, because we have them, the political actors already anticipate their intervention, and in that sense they already also counter argue or speak up or bring up the opponent's argument. So there is really a discussion going on. People talk to each other and also bring in or discuss the other perspectives. So that's part of the game, is, or because this happens because the journalists are there and do this check. So, and kind of what could happen, or the importance here is the elite, the whole process is what I call elite driven, or what is discussed in the literature as elite driven. This does not mean that citizens or bottom up actors could not become active here, but that those who prepare the debate, they have a special responsibility, and they bring us into a certain direction, and in which direction they go, that's of course highly crucial. So we see in general it works quite well, but the long-term and the global perspective have it a bit more difficult to come into the public sphere. So that's the danger there. Now, let me show you some first results on a study we are doing at the moment on artificial intelligence. So we were analyzing the debate, the public debate in 4 countries until the end of last year, so the last 2 years, but end of last year. So ChatGPT debate is not really covered here. Those are the frames we see, and basically it's a rather pragmatic, positive coverage that is dominating the public sphere in those countries. And if I look at framing by actor type, I would like to emphasize 2 things. Who brings in here the ethical aspects? Those are introduced by judiciary and scientists, and the industry is the most euphoric one. So I miss here, or what could be wishful thinking maybe, but value sensitive design does not seem to be relevant or most important for the industry. So that is a fact that we find here. So the danger that the blind leading the blind, the industry, if technology or those companies that lead us in this area, do they go into the direction that is good for society? I can put the question mark there. And another result, so as I said, the classical news media is still very important. Here we have an insight from social media. So we analyzed the discourse on Facebook, political discourse. And what we see here is above the histograms of total posts of political actors. So who posts? It's also not totally equal. But then here, who gets interaction? That's a clearly winner takes it all situation. Only very few get a lot of interaction on Facebook. Maybe show it a bit differently here. We looked, or we did a graph based on the proportions in the Swiss National Parliament. So which parties has how many seats in percentages. So you see from the left to the right, we ordered them in terms of percentages. Then here, who has a page on Facebook. That's more or less proportional. So if you are a member in the parliament, we classified or we collected this kind of information and see who has then a page on Facebook, from which parties do they are they coming from. Then here, who posts, still more or less proportional, but then who gets interaction, you see this party, it's the SVP in this case, takes over. So the writing party gets much more interaction than the others, and it's disproportional to the number of seats. Same with gender. Here we start with percentages in the parliament, rather proportional in terms of who has a page. Male post a bit more, but then male political actors get much more interaction. So the winner takes it all. That's the situation also here. And that's particularly disturbing because in Switzerland we have a power sharing system, and the situation here does not correspond to these values. We did not analyze the content of the post, so of course it's an interaction, but we know from literature that those posts who are negative and emotional and provocative and have a film inside get much more interaction. So that would be the expectation here, but this is of course not the algorithmic system we want. Now let me go back to the voter or to the flow of information and look at the voter perspective here. So from a voter's perspective, what is the decision tree? What does he or she do? So you are a voter, that's of course in Switzerland can also be debated. So foreigners, for instance, cannot be or cannot vote. But once you are a voter, you can decide to non-participate or to participate. And that's a free choice. And I would also want that this remains a free choice, and there are also good reasons to abstain. So I would not say that people or voters need to participate all the time. Then if you participate, there is a heuristic and a systematic approach. So it's a shortcut. This heuristic approach is a shortcut or a short way to decide. And the most important heuristic in Swiss direct democracy is this political party heuristic. So you rely on the party you feel closest to. That's a very important heuristic. Trust heuristic is if you rely on the Federal Council, for instance, or if you know somebody who is a specialist in the topic and you rely on his or her opinion. And status quo heuristic is that you just think it was good the way it was, so no change. That's a risk-averse situation. The systematic approach is then if you take a decision based on arguments. That also happens quite often. 70% of Swiss voters are aware and know the arguments if they vote, so they can make up a reason. Often those two approaches are combined, so you kind of know a bit the arguments, you know a bit the political party positions, and then you might be able to choose. And here is important, this heuristic approach is very important in decision making, or that you can take a shortcut, and or that you are you know how to use them. For instance, if you have at the cantonal or if you have at the national level a party that brings up the yes position, and then at the cantonal level there are some cantonal branches that are against this proposal from the same party. So the Mitte in Valais and in Basel and in Zurich and in Solothurn or so is against their national organization or has the counter position. That makes that signals something to people. And if you are affiliated to this party, then you might get more interested in the real arguments and really start to read about the topic, because that's a signal for you that you should get informed. And there are different mechanisms like this. Maybe you apply a left-right wing approach and say, if it's a left-right, then it's clear. But if the most leftist party and the most right party have the same position, and so then you start also to think, why is this, and start to get informed. So these shortcuts are extremely important, and yeah, that they play a big role also here. And maybe you are not interested in this topic, but next time you are. So that also is what happens, that not even if you have a turnout or a voter participation approximately roughly at 45% or 40%, it's not that it's always the same who participate. It depends on topic, and across topic that's much higher. So leadership and heuristics matter. And here I was thinking of, or what I realized is that the big companies, the globalized companies, are largely missing in the public debate. If we talk about, for instance, the EID or so, it's mainly, or the big players are mainly absent. And that's a problem from my point of view. The globalized companies, they might not care about the discussion going on or the national values. So they just remain absent, or it might be bad for their shareholder value at the end, that there's a risk because some might not agree with their position or so. So I note that they are mainly absent in public sphere. But also if you look at the share of people employed sector-wise or in these companies, we see that this is a relevant amount. So approximately half of Swiss people, or of people in Switzerland, are employed by a small and medium enterprise, and roughly a fourth is employed by a large enterprise, and that is a globalized, or can be a globalized company. So I miss their involvement. I think they remain absent, and particularly if we are aware that the tech companies are leading, or also are most profit-oriented, or win most, and remain absent, I think that's a problem. Recently, I saw this article, and it analyzes, or it states that the leading actors come or stem from only 20 companies. So 20 companies are basically are very relevant. So I would say we should not only adopt a bottom-up approach or a participation from the citizens, but also we should involve those 20 companies or others. I mean, but if it's so concentrated, that's a fact. That's probably not in that sense co-creation what we imagine, but why are they absent? And then another hint here, I would like to point to this book by Lance Bennett, Communicating the Future. So he analyzes what can be done in order to, or how did neoliberalism become so important, and what might be missing today in order to get this transformation into action. So networking ideas is highly important here, or what can be maybe improved, so that this organized action across that want to transform the society. So what might be needed also is to bring up facts. What is the consequences if we do not change anything, or could be helpful to also convince those leaders who remain a bit absent. And here's some ideas. So why not to build an IT ecosystem in Switzerland particularly? You mentioned it yesterday, compared to India, for instance. It's much more a latecomer, more critically, and so in that sense, there is not an IT ecosystem that is already there, or kind of in some sense it does not go fast, at least. Climate adaptation scenarios, not only in terms of climate, what do we expect, but also in terms of social and economic consequences it has. Quality of news, okay, the importance, but the involvement of the middle level, the organization, the enterprises, that matters to differences in capitalist systems and so on. So I think here what we could also do would be to show a really empirical proof of I mean, that's not so easy, but yeah, what does it change? Now, let me come to the Aarau case also for a moment and transfer this knowledge to another context. That is what we did also in Aarau. So the first is this flow of information. I presented the 4 steps in this model. One could compare it or bring it in line with the idea of collective intelligence. I think that's quite similar. These steps can be compared, and those were also realized in the PB process in Aarau. And there we emphasized, or we varied the voting system. That was possible because we used the online tool. Without such an online tool, we could not apply the methods of equal share, what we did there in terms instead of the greedy, the majority voting. So this online tool was really important. Here, what is also was important, that Aarau was there from the beginning. It was our partner, and we started with their perspective, or asked them also what is important from your perspective, what is the problem so to solve. And they have in their as an aim for the city, among other, they have the inclusion of foreigners. So we ended up that also foreigners could vote, and also kids. So that was came from that was in line, of course, with what we agreed, but also came up from their perspective. Then yeah, and what was also important, you remember the role of the leaders, or that in political decision-making processes, it needs to be prepared. And here we relied on the so-called Quartiervereine, the clubs in the districts. They also played a highly important role, and other also clubs. We tried to bring them on board too, and that happened then. So some pictures also with some people in the room. Josh is not here, but he was also, of course, highly involved. And Vangelis is not here, will speak after me, but I'm not here today. But those also were involved. And here also pictures, and you see the focus is here on preparing. It was really a lot of work in preparation. So the workshops came afterwards with the citizens, but you should not, and I think you don't, but it is a lot of effort. So we should really think also carefully for which procedures do we make such an effort, and for which not. It happened that Corona was, we wanted to go in the field 1 year earlier. Because of Corona, we postponed this for a year, and as a result, that was quite helpful because the budget increased by 20,000 Swiss francs. So another administrative group also joined and also brought in their budget, basically. So that was helpful at the end. The vote was about 50,000 Swiss francs. And as Dirk said yesterday, we did the voting input and voting aggregation, so they could spend or score 10 points, and the methods of equal share was used as a voting aggregation method. Yesterday it was mentioned kind of this danger that the group can mobilize particularly. That was also a concern that was mentioned by Arau. And we solved it in a very pragmatic way. We said that voters need to vote at least for 3 projects, that not one group can cannibalize basically all the thing, but that's of course still a danger, or that can happen a bit. So the result is here. That's the points, and that's the result how the budget is spent in comparison to the greedy method, to the more majority voting, and here methods of equal shares. And you see it's much more diverse, much more. Every city, every part of the city gets some project. And we find consistently already that the voting methods plays a role in terms of legitimacy. So we find more legitimate results. It is well accepted by the voters. And here in terms of participation, we also see here positive results, more female voters, more younger voters. And that is also different than at the national level. So thanks, and are there any questions?